Mules.
Hello and a warm welcome to the FinTech FinCrime Exchange Showcase event. We hope you're all well and in good spirits. My name is John Paul and I'm the Global Community Director and I shall be your host for today. So the FFE Showcase, how does it all work? We are currently in webinar format, so mics and videos are disabled, yet we do want this to be quite an interactive session. So please take advantage of the chat function to join in the conversation. The chat box for most of you can be found at the bottom of your screen. Another option to get involved, if you wish to ask questions, the Q&A box, again found at the bottom of the screen, can be used. We have lots of time today and have factored in time for questions, so please don't be shy and make the most of this opportunity. We would be extremely grateful if you could share with us some feedback post this session. This is our first time doing so, so feedback would be extremely helpful and allow us to develop either a better product for you in the future or completely scrap this concept. We won't know unless you tell us. And of course, all children and pets welcome. My baby and dog are likely to interrupt with some sort of vocal appearance, so I apologize in advance. So why the showcase? As I said, this is the first time we've hosted this type of event and we're delighted to welcome all of you today. We hope we've been super clear on the intention of this event in our marketing, as it is a very different approach to how we have conducted and hosted events in the past. Yet given kind of the purposeful divergence, it is fantastic to see so many of you join us. So we hope you find it all useful and valuable in a different way. It is not your regular FFE meetup where we discuss typologies and trends as a community. Yet today is an open event and an opportunity for our partners to present and demonstrate their products and services. From my personal kind of perspective, it's great to also be including FINTRAIL today. A little antidote to share here for more context and motivation. Even though FINTRAIL powers the FFE and holds space for the community, we don't share FINTRAIL services at FFE events. We are super conscious to maintain a sanctuary for our members to share information, to the extent that some members have actually thought FINTRAIL was an events company and not an anti-financial crime consultancy. So hopefully everyone will get to find out more about FINTRAIL later on or very shortly. And yes, our hope is that through sharing what we do and all of our particular specialities and expertise, along with our partners today, Jumio, ComplyAdvantage, Rusi, EFI, and Tail, we share ways in which financial institutions can adopt solutions to manage fraud risks so that they can thrive free from the threat of financial crime. I'm conscious for some that this may be your first foray into the FinTech FinCrime Exchange. So let me quickly just offer everyone an overview. The FFE is a free forum for anti-financial crime professionals working for fintechs to share best practice in financial crime risk management. It is the largest network of its kind. We host regular meetups in London, New York, San Francisco, and Singapore. I have to say it that way because I am looking forward to the day in which we can do so soon. Obviously, post-pandemic, we have continued our program virtually. At meetups, as I alluded to moments ago, our members share typologies, case studies, and best practice. And we also engage with external speakers such as academics, law enforcement, charities, regulators, and industry bodies, always to keep the community abreast of the wider FinCrime landscape. We host a Slack channel for the community where members are able to communicate outside of meetups on all things affecting today's FinCrime professional. And finally, we produce lots of thought leadership and host community initiatives, including events like today and our podcast, FinCrime Spotlight, which is now heading into its third season. As you can see on the screen, these are the latest membership figures for the regions in which we host the FFE. It was fantastic to expand the community given the challenging environment which everyone found themselves operating in last year. And this year, I'm particularly keen to have an even greater impact in APAC and the US. So please continue to spread the word about the FFE. The more fintechs we get involved, the more robust and resilient as a community we become. And a quick shout out here to all the FFE champions out there who keep on banging the FFE drum. We had a spectacular end to 2020 with FFE Com Week. It was super well received and attended, and it was great after a year of Zoom fatigue, which I'm sure for many of us has continued now into 2021, that so many people were able to join us. On the screen, you can see just a few stats from the week. And earlier today, we launched FFE Con Week on demand. So the sessions from the week are now accessible to watch via the FinTRAIL website. Just a heads up that a sign up is required. And so for all those that missed any of the sessions, you can now catch them on demand at your leisure. Always want to share the good news. So what was even greater was the generosity of attendees at FFE Com Week. Over the week, we managed to raise a total of £2,325 for Unseen UK. In case anyone missed the week, Unseen supports survivors of modern slavery and human trafficking and operates the Modern Slavery and Exploitation Helpline. They work collaboratively with businesses and governments to create strategies and policies that will prevent modern slavery. Cool, that is enough from me. I hope that was a good warm up and also offered a good set the scene, or at least set expectations for today. So I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague, James Nurse. Over to you, James.
Hi everyone, and afternoon. And yeah, just to echo obviously JP's sentiments that it's great to see everyone here, and obviously thanks to all our fantastic partners that we work in various ways that have joined us on this, obviously this session that we're going to do this afternoon. But that's enough about them. We'll talk about FinTRAIL for a bit. So as JP said, it's not often we get a chance to kind of give everyone a bit of an overview of what we do and how we work. So hopefully you all enjoy it and kind of out of it having a bit more of an understanding of how we operate as a business from a FinTRAIL perspective, because there's a bit more to us than just the FinTech FinCrime Exchange and the work we do there. Just waiting for slides, bear with me a moment. There we go. Sorry about that, bit of delay there. But yeah, who am I? So I'm the managing director of the Europe team. So I lead all engagements from a client perspective from Europe and beyond. I've got obviously an interesting background in the sense that I've come from industry. So I've held a various amount of roles in kind of the first line and second line of defense across a few different industries, from obviously like the gambling sector to kind of challenger banks and money transfer as well. And so hopefully, obviously, any financial crime needs that you might have, it might be something we could help with, or I can help answer your questions directly. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk a bit about FinTRAIL, as JB said. We'll talk a little about who we are, a bit of the background, what we do in terms of our approach, a bit about our services, some of our case studies, and also some about our insights. So what else do we do outside of the services that we offer with our clients? Because we do a lot of good insights out there that hopefully you as a community, regardless of your background from a financial crime perspective, we may or may not find useful. So wanted to just to share where they might be and just make you aware of that they're there if you need them. So JP gave you a bit of an overview of the FFE. He didn't touch upon the expert working group, but I'll clearly leave that to him for another day. But who is we are as FinTRAIL. So we are a consultancy company. We specialize in anti-financial crime support. So we don't call ourselves boutique because we very much compare ourselves as a specialism rather than a boutique kind of consultancy business. But I guess when we talk about anything to do with financial crime risk, that is helping our clients or whoever we work with, supporting them with anything related to financial crime risk. So from sanctions risk to anti-bribery and corruption, to fraud, insider trading, insider risk, terrorist financing, tax evasion, all those really interesting topics that you'll be very much aware with, but equally helping people navigate that regulatory compliance landscape. So obviously there's a whole bunch of different regulatory needs depending on the region that you're operating in. So very much helping our clients and who we work with in that regulatory space, making sure they're compliant in a hopefully customer-centric way to what they need to do in the region that they operate in. And obviously, as JP mentioned, our mission statement is very similar to obviously what we have on the FFE perspective. We very much are passionate about making sure, or wanting to make sure, that all companies have that opportunity to thrive free from any negative impacts that financial crime may or may not cause. So clearly a big ask, but we like to think that we contribute somewhat in some way. Best way to start in terms of where we've come from. So FinTrail has been operating for around 4 to 5 years now, and I thought the best place to start would be give an overview of just who founded it. So we've got our fantastic founders in Gemma Rogers and Robert Evans, and I thought the best way to display it, if anyone's been following maybe our LinkedIn page or our newsletters, is the trading cards that we've been sending out. So a bit of a fun way to kind of introduce the team in a different ways. So I did think about and pitch to JP whether we could do a poll or something for the wider audience to see who we think would come out on tops here, but I think my inner self advised against that due to my own kind of job security requirements. But as you can see, it's probably quite an even match between the two of them, and obviously bonus points for anyone who can guess what those bonus skills are at the bottom there. But it's not just Rob and Gemma, right? We've got a bigger team than that. So we cover obviously a variety of different regions. So obviously you've got myself in Europe, then you have obviously Megan in the US, Pyle covering APAC through Singapore, and we also have Mara in the Middle East as well. So we very much are that global presence that we want to support our clients either regionally or as they expand as well. And then here's the rest of the team, right? Because again, it's not just Rob and Gemma, it's not just the 4 of us in the different regions. From a managing director perspective, we've got a really fantastic team of SMEs from a financial crime perspective that can support in a variety of different ways. And I guess one of our main key objectives from a FinTrail perspective is make sure that we get those complementary experiences throughout the team that we think our clients need to help in different ways. So we've got a variety of different people with bespoke skills to help with all of those different financial crime aspects that come at you in the variety of different ways. And the last 12 months have been really interesting for us as much as anyone. We've had the opportunity to work with some amazing clients across around 80 different projects, across around 38 different unique clients throughout the UK, Europe, APAC, the US as well. So I'm really excited to share some of those services and how we work with our clients coming up now. So here's just an overview of some of the people we've been working with over the last 12 months and beyond. And as you can see, it's a whole range of different individuals, from startup to scale up to small to more mature businesses as well. So we find ourselves working with anyone who operates in the regulated sector or anyone that needs anything to do with financial crime risk. So it could be crypto space, it could be challenger banks, it could be money transfer. We work a lot with some of the banks, especially in their innovation teams as well, helping with them anything to do with financial crime risk. So a whole variety of different interesting topics. And it's definitely one of the benefits of working for a company like FinTrail. We get to kind of really good exposure to a whole range of different really interesting products and really interesting stakeholders. Before I leap into kind of the services and what we do from a services perspective, I guess it's probably useful if we just share our approach, because that probably sums it up quite nicely. So how we support is very much aligned to the stage in which the different businesses we work are in. So whether it's from that startup to scale up, we can obviously work in different levels, and very much this approach is aligned to that. So whether they're a newly established organization that are looking to go for a license and build out their financial crime framework, we can obviously help build that framework with people to kind of push forward and obviously really get that product live. But obviously when you've got that product live, clearly there's an element of scaling, and I know a lot of people are scaling right now, especially in the fintech sector and beyond. So making sure that you can really kind of, from that building stage, move forward and obviously make sure your financial crime framework is scaling alongside obviously the actual business as well. And we can help with that as well. And then clearly, if you've already got a financial crime framework in place, we can also support from an assurance perspective. So loads of good stuff that we do from assurance, and I'll share with those kind of different services that we do shortly as well. And then finally, clearly, as we know, the financial crime landscape is extremely complicated and comes with huge amounts of problems and risks and issues to solve that we try and do as a collective. But very much we're there to help and solve any of those issues and work with you to solve them. Hopefully that gives you a really good overview, but looking forward to sharing a few more of the specifics now. So when we talk about building, obviously that's a variety of things. So we at FinTrail, we're a consultancy business. We don't have a product like some of our fantastic partners, like maybe ComplyAdvantage or the team at Jumio. But what we do is actually build that framework behind it. So making sure that anything you put into those services are, in terms of process or your policy, is adequate before you actually implement it into a tooling, or internal or external tooling, right? So we can basically support on any of that anti-financial crime framework, and that could be anything from helping develop a robust customer risk assessment methodology, to maybe designing your policies and procedures, to helping you create maybe a transaction monitoring rules engine or something like that, or a screening program. So we're very much there to help build that with you. And we've had lots of use cases where we've helped kind of either customers who are just starting out build something, or actually helping people redesign something that's not working effectively. So building is a key part of what we do, and we don't have a product. We build the concepts that would go into the product, or the partner that you would utilize, or the internal tool that you're looking to build. And then scaling, right? So it's one thing having something built, but clearly making sure it scales effectively with your team and your actual business is equally as important, right? So we can scale and help scale in a variety of different ways. But I guess some of the ones I'll cherry pick here, I guess, are on things like hiring. And I know Alex will have lots of good and interesting stuff to share on the hiring front, but it's something we're very much involved with as well. Growing your financial crime team. So obviously everyone tries to adopt some kind of free lines of defense model or an equivalent that works for them, but what does that look like for you as a business? So we've done a lot with larger organizations or scaling organizations, helping them develop that kind of financial crime framework, or redesigning that kind of financial crime framework from a free lines of defense model. And then training. Training is clearly a lot of things we do as well. We've obviously got some great stuff that we've done with ACAMs that I'll share shortly. But we do a lot of both bespoke specific training on various topics that from senior management to maybe critical thinking training across a variety of different things. And then if you're scaling, you're looking for new markets or expanding your products. Clearly, we do a lot on that side of things as well, helping you to maybe assess the risk that's represented by those new products, or assess the risk that's represented by those new kind of markets as well, is something we do. And also obviously doing regulatory gap analysis. Your obviously requirements for one jurisdiction may be different to another jurisdiction, and how you adopt some kind of standardized approach may have some regional nuances as well. So making sure we're there to support, and when you're expanding to those different regions is something we've got a lot of experience doing as well. And then assurance, probably one of the more obvious things that we can support with, and I'm sure some people that we've helped with audits online may or may not be on this call, but we've helped quite a few of the FinTech FinCrime Exchange members with their audits, which is an obvious one, but it's not just audits that we can help with, obviously. So we've done a lot on designing assurance plans. So whether it's like your QA or your quality assurance or your quality control kind of practices within your financial crime function, whether it's thematic spot checks, obviously reviewing a specific area of your function to give feedback and recommendations on, but then also testing, right? So clearly, obviously, implementing new tooling is really important, but making sure you test it is equally as important. So we've done a lot on the testing front for new products that are going to market. And then finally, I guess the last one I wanted to highlight in this section is just risk assessments. And this is something that often gets overlooked, and it's something we can't speak highly enough, and the importance of it when you're approaching anything to do with anti-financial crime, making sure you have a proper risk assessments process for understanding your inherent risk as a business and mitigating that effectively with your controls as well. So what we've done there is a lot of specific support on helping new clients or existing clients or new products determine what their risks are by working our way through that process, designing an enterprise-wide risk assessment process with them, and guiding them through that cycle as well if they don't have one already. So that's from an assurance perspective. So lots of really hopefully interesting things for you all there. And then I guess the final area of our services is that solving complex problems. So as mentioned previously, there's obviously lots of interesting and difficult things to navigate from a financial crime perspective. So making sure there's consideration to those in our services was also important for us. So I guess the kind of things that we kind of work on from a FinTrail perspective is anything from maybe specialist research. And I guess the benefit of that is we work with some really, really good stakeholders through our clients, and also the work that we do in the FFE. So from a benchmarking perspective, we know the landscape really well, probably better from a fintech perspective than anyone else in the market. So we're really well placed to do any research or advise you on anything related to that. And then I guess another area that we obviously support on is things like complex due diligence or financial crime investigation. So we're not talking ad hoc kind of onboarding of your kind of vanilla client. We're talking about obviously requirements to do enhanced due diligence, and this could be or investigations on specific cases. So this could be, for instance, a higher risk client that you need a full report on, or another one that we've done quite a lot of is things like investor due diligence. So with some of our clients who are looking to take maybe specific funding for obviously a raise, we do investor due diligence potentially on those individuals to make sure that where the money's coming from, as we all know, is very important, and making sure everything there is okay. So lots of interesting stuff from a solving perspective, and all those complex things that we know land on your table as a financial crime professional as well. So hopefully that's a good overview, but hopefully some of these quick case studies will bring it to life as well. So I actually had the pleasure of working on both of these particular case studies. And I guess I'll just touch on the first one. Obviously one's anonymous, one's not, but the first one was specifically working with a UK bank who clearly had a global presence, but they were an African bank with a focus on trying to create a digital product. And I really like this one because A, the stakeholders were fantastic on this, but B, it really showcases all of those different services that I kind of discussed, especially in that build section. So they already had obviously overarching processes and policies from a bank-wide level, but obviously to create a digital product in the kind of environment or a fintech product is very different, and trying to kind of fit that square peg in a round hole often does not work. So where we came in from a FinTrail perspective is we helped design their kind of financial crime program from the ground up, in line with their kind of their bank practices, with obviously some specific nuances. So this involved doing a full risk assessment just to make sure they understood the new risks that their new product would represent. We created an onboarding journey, we created a customer risk assessment, and then we also helped design some transaction monitoring scenarios that they would subsequently go on to implement into their vendor or partner of choice as well. So hopefully a really good overview of those different services that we can really, really support with, and a really interesting product with a very different customer base as well. And then the second kind of case study that I just wanted to highlight was also a really interesting one that, again, I had the pleasure with working on. So this was with a company, a neobank called Nubank, who you may or may not be familiar with, but they are definitely one of the biggest fintechs in the world right now. So very much worth checking out to see what they're up to. So they're based in Brazil and Mexico. And this project was really, really interesting because it was before the pandemic even started. And it really, really was a good litmus test for us for our remote services. And obviously everything is being delivered remote from a FinTrail perspective now. So this was a really, really good project for us, where we were working with stakeholders across Brazil, Mexico, and clearly kind of Europe, helping deliver a review of certain areas in terms of some regulatory change that was happening in those specific regions, and advising them on what their next steps would be on that. So again, a really good project. And yeah, if you're following Nubank and their growth, it's phenomenal. So we're really worth checking them out and what they're up to, and how they're approaching things as well. And then, so that's our services. But the last thing on our services, I guess I wanted to touch upon is the Certified AML FinTech Compliance Associate. So last year we were really busy with ACAMS, and we're really proud of this course because it's the first course that we've done with ACAMS on specifically for fintech. So we spent the latter half of 2020 working with the fantastic team at ACAMS to help develop this this certificate specifically for, well, not necessarily specifically for the fintech industry, but the course was designed with the fintech industry in mind. So this was designed by us at FinTRAIL in line with ACAMS, very much created by fintech SMEs with their input. I know some of the members from the FinTech FinCrime Exchange were involved as well, which was great. But this course is for anyone who's interested in obviously financial crime and upskilling themselves from a fintech perspective, and the approaches maybe and best practices fintechs look to in preventing financial crime, because clearly it can have some slight differences to maybe more traditional businesses as well. So if you want to find out more, feel free to go to the FinTrail website or the ACAMS website. The full syllabus is there. It went live this year, I think in January. So still lots of opportunity to register for the courses that are coming up this year as well. So but hopefully one you'll all enjoy, and feel free to check it out from an ACAMS perspective and the certificate and Kafka. And welcome to answer any questions you might have on that at the end. And then clearly we are a consultancy business, but we do some good, hopefully, I say good, I'm hoping some useful insights for the community as well that we do circulate externally, especially on with the FFE members as well. So one of the things we produce is a monthly kind of regulatory recap, which reflects on all the good things and all the new changes that are happening from a regulatory perspective the previous month, because clearly there's always a lot going on, not just in Europe, but beyond Europe as well. So we produce that on a monthly basis, and feel free to kind of sign up to our newsletters or maybe our LinkedIn, follow our LinkedIn page to kind of get these regulatory caps. And it's free, no need to pay, and don't think you need to kind of put any details. They're there for you to kind of use either on the, we post them frequently on LinkedIn or they're on our hosted on our website for you to download as well. So the last 6 months are there for you to utilize. But it's not just obviously the reg caps we do. We do actually do obviously in other industry white papers. We do a lot in collaboration with the FFE and our partners. So I know this year there'll be some really good insights and white papers coming out with the likes of Jumio and ComplyAdvantage. So definitely keep posted to keep an eye out for them. And we've obviously done a couple recently, and this is, I guess, the one I'd like to highlight most because it only came out last week. So I find geopolitics personally really interesting. So what we've done is created a beginner's guide to geopolitics with a focus on how it impacts the fintech industry. So if you're interested in a topic or you think it might be relevant to you, feel free to check this out as well. It's a really insightful, well, I think it's a really insightful piece that the team from Jess and Mikey produced with the team at Pangira as well. So feel free to check that one out as well, please. And then the last thing I just want to mention is another topical piece as well. So another piece that we're working with our partners. So you can see, obviously, we're really big on community and the FinTech FinCrime Exchange and the work we do at FinTrail as well. So we do a lot with our really fantastic partners. So next week we're doing another event with EFI, which hopefully, if you can all attend. So just to give you a bit of a kind of not a spoiler, but an insight of what we're going to be discussing. So around 12 months ago, we did a piece on business continuity and pandemic planning. So clearly one of the key aspects that came out of that piece that we did was the importance of people in this landscape. So what we thought would be a great opportunity for us to do now is reflect 12 months on what that looks like and have that discussion of whether we still think people are a focus from a financial crime perspective, and how do you balance kind of technology and the people behind it? So feel free to kind of stay tuned for that. It's on the 17th of March, 3 till 4:30. And yeah, it's free to attend and open to anyone, not just FFE members. So definitely stay tuned for that. And I think, JP, that's me. And yeah, but very welcome any questions anyone might have on either on FinTrail, our insights, or the webinar coming up, or maybe Kafka as well.
Cool, thank you, James. I was just reflecting myself that in probably those 20 minutes was the most I've ever learned about FinTrail ever, even being part of the team for so long. So no, super interesting insights. It's great to kind of share how the team works and the value they bring to clients and projects. We do not have any questions in the Q&A box, which is cool. James is going to be here for a little while longer, so if there is anything, please do put a question in the Q&A. If not, because I do know James does have to run off to actually do some work, I will share any questions that come in late to James later on, and we'll get back to you personally. Cool, awesome. Thank you, James.
Thanks, JB.
And yes, we've alluded to earlier our partners here. Just to kind of share, we did announce two new sponsorships of the two new sponsors of the FFE in January. And it's great to welcome our first sponsor, Jumio, to the floor, and introducing you to Dion. Dion, over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, JP. Hello, everyone. Let me see. Oh, just bear with me 1 second. All right, quick introduction about myself. My name is Dion Tjahjono, Head of Solutions Engineer from Jumio, with focus on the UK, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa markets. I joined Jumio more than 2 years ago, bringing over 10 years of leadership experience in solutions consulting, program management, and also technical delivery. I am delighted to be given the opportunity to speak in the showcase event, where in the next 20 minutes, I will share some information about Jumio, who we are as a company, and how our products and solution could help businesses deter fraud without sacrificing the most important user experience. At the end of my presentation, of course, I will try to answer any questions submitted by you, as many as time permits. So let's get started. Firstly, who is Jumio? Jumio is the leader provider for end-to-end identity verification and eKYC solutions. To date, Jumio has verified more than 300 million identities issued by over 200 countries and territories. This includes verifying national ID, resident permit, military ID, consular ID, visa document, and even old paper version of driving licenses. Jumio powers the identity verification systems behind leading businesses in financial services, sharing economy, digital cryptocurrency, retail, travel, and also online gaming sector, to name a few. As a company, we are a truly global company. Jumio was named as the fastest growing cybersecurity company, with over 1,500 employees across 12 offices globally in UK, Europe, North America, Latin America, and also Asia Pacific. Jumio is in the forefront of innovations. We reduce the number of steps required to verify ID document, which is then paired with a corroborating selfie to make sure that the person is who they say they are. We also look into different ways to optimize the language and graphics used on screen to help maximize the most important online conversion. These innovations actually led to Jumio being recognized for our outstanding user experience, brought home not one, but 2 gold awards at the UK Digital Experience Award for Best User Experience and also Best Digital Customer Journey, specifically for our partnership with Monzo Bank in the UK. Gartner also included Jumio as a representative vendor in the market guide for identity proving and corroboration. Additionally, our products and solutions are fueled by advanced technologies such as Inform AI, machine learning, certified liveness or presence detection, biometrics, OCR, and computer vision. We continue to be recognized as leader in this space, with the latest Innovation Award won last year in 2020 for our authentication solution. Experience 2020 Global Identity and Fraud Report found that 57% of businesses report higher fraud losses associated with account opening and account takeover than any other types of fraud. Now, to protect against these fraud and financial crimes, we all know that businesses online need to know and trust that their customers are who they claim to be. Additionally, Jumio also believes that good customers should not be bothered with identity verification solutions that actually slows them down. Fraudsters really have no place in today's digital economy, and that's why Jumio is in the business of converting strangers to customers, onboarding good customers faster, deterring fraudsters, and meeting KYC, AML compliance, and other regional regulatory such as GDPR in Europe. Jumio protects the ecosystem of business from fraudster through the Jumio KYX platform, which is a unified end-to-end identity verification and eKYC platform offering a range of identity proving services to accurately establish, maintain, and also reassert trust from account opening to ongoing transaction monitoring. Jumio is the total solution to know your X online, whoever the X is in your business. Could be your customers, your users, your patients, or even your own employees. The Jumio KYX platform delivers the assurance you need to know about them, and most importantly, to then continuously trust them. If we look into the identification market, according to Gartner Market Guide published in September last year, by 2022, 80% of organizations will be using document-centric identity proving as part of their onboarding workflows, which is an increase from approximately 30% in 2020. Jumio uses document-centric real-world identity proving, which is a set of tools to provide confidence in the genuine presence of the identity owner. This approach enables businesses to verify applicants or customers over remote digital channels, whereby a passport, driver's license, or other forms of government-issued photo ID document is captured via mobile phone camera, webcam, or scanner. The document is then assessed for signs of tampering or any other fraudulent attempts. If passed, the same document is then compared to a selfie taken by the individual submitting the document to get a match result. With the approach that is as simple as taking a selfie, Jumio actually transform the necessary yet sometimes frustrating process of identity verification into one that your customers will actually appreciate. Using our award-winning technologies, you will turn good people into good customers faster than ever, and also trust that your customer are who they claim to be. If required, additional supporting documents can further be added to the verification process to add additional layer of checks, for example, to confirm the individual address. The Jumio KYX platform also offers ongoing monitoring that goes beyond the initial identity verification during account creation or customer onboarding. These services are designed to further safeguard the individual account against account takeover, money laundering, or other financial crimes. Jumio authentication solution, for example, uses biometric and certified presence detection to periodically confirm the identity of the account owner, while Jumio transaction monitoring solution is able to use aggregated data to quickly identify any hidden data such as patterns and trends, and uses these aggregations as part of our suspicious activity detection. In terms of our solution, Jumio has a comprehensive end-to-end identity proving product portfolio that leverage different advanced technology and automation to help different businesses fight fraud and financial crimes. Jumio ID verification solution verifies the authenticity of a government-issued photo ID document, such as passport, driving license, or national IDs in seconds. This solution leverages Inform AI, machine learning, and other technologies to determine if an ID document is genuine by inspecting the presence of document security features, such as microtext, hologram, watermarks, ghost images, and also against known official document templates. Our ID verification solution can be easily embedded into the business workflow, where we can capture key details via OCR and computer vision, such as the individual name, first name, last name, date of birth, document number, expiry date, before then we return a definitive binary, either approved or not approved result to you. Our identity verification helps financial institutions and other businesses to know the true identity of their customers by comparing the picture on their ID document with a corroborating selfie. Jumio identity verification uses face-based biometrics to ensure that the person behind a transaction is actually alive and present, and more importantly, who they say they are, before running similarity checks against the picture on the ID document. We know that a simple requirement of a corroborating selfie can deter as much as 90% of fraudulent attempts, since it requires the scammer to actually capture and share their own face with the company that they're trying to defraud. Hence, we believe that this solution delivers a powerful fraud deterrent to cybercriminal and would deliver a significantly higher level of online identity assurance. Our document verification solution serves as an additional layer to identity proofing, where it provides businesses the ability to capture and verify supported documents such as utility bills, bank statements, credit card statements, council bill, social security card, or even birth certificates. In addition to extracting relevant information from these documents, such as the person's name, address, and document date, Jumio can also perform additional checks, such as address validation, to, again, provide that extra layer for identity proving. Jumio authentication solution can authenticate the digital identities of businesses' existing users with a high level of assurance. Whenever an individual is successfully onboarded using Jumio ID and identity verification during account opening, Jumio's customer will have a copy of the individual three-dimensional face map, which contains over 100 times more liveness data than a regular two-dimensional photo. When there is a risky transaction such as wire transfer or even a simple password reset, the individual simply needs to retake a selfie where a new 3D face map is instantly created, and Jumio can then compare that to the original face map taken during registration to ensure that the person requesting the wire transfer or the new password is, in fact, the actual account owner and the same user onboarded previously. We know that this is significantly more secure than traditional forms of authentication, such as knowledge-based authentication or two-factor authentications, which we all know are quite outdated and prone to attacks. Our AML solution focuses primarily on AML compliance, including PEPs, sanctions, and adverse media screening, transaction monitoring, financial crimes case management, and also certain reporting, such as suspicious activity reports. The whole entire transaction monitoring process is recorded with a comprehensive audit trail that is maintained in a case management system. I would now like to show you a quick demonstration video for our ID and identity verification. In this video, we are going to take a quick look on the Jumio journey for the mobile phone, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. And then on the left-hand side of your screen, you can also see the Jumio portal, where businesses can view the end result and any information extracted from the ID document during the verification process. The first step that the end user will have to do is to select preferred issuing country and document type. The workflow then prompts user for the front end of their ID and uses edge detection to automatically capture the image without requirement of the end user to press any buttons. We then also ask for the backside of the ID when additional information is required and use edge detection again for automatic capture. The workflow then requires detailed biometric face map of the user, which will be used as a comparison against the picture on the ID card. After completing the journey, our advanced technology will review the images, making sure that they are complete and readable before sending them to Jumio to complete the verification process. Verification results can then be seen in the Jumio portal within seconds. This includes images of the ID document, both front side and also the back side, and also the user selfie. All information that Jumio can extract are presented back to the business, categorized separately to make it easier for a case manager to review each data point in further detail. Looking back at the video demo, the Jumio front-end workflow can be separated into these simple steps. Scan initiation, which can be done via web or mobile phone. Our solution will then prompt the end user to capture the government-issued ID documents and also to provide selfie within the same journey. Additionally, and apologies, this is not shown in the video, the same user can also provide their supporting documents such as bank statement or utility bills, again within the same journey. Upon receiving these images, Jumio will inspect a variety of security features in the ID document, ensuring that this is an authentic government-issued ID. And when selfie is provided, Jumio will also complete a similarity checks. This is to ensure that the selfie on the image is the same as the picture on the ID document. At the end of our verification process, Jumio will provide a definitive approve or not approve answer. We don't provide a score nor a maybe result to businesses. This definitive decision reduces the amount of manual reviews that have to be performed by our customers. After providing the approved result, Jumio also offers different API endpoints to provide additional checks, such as address validation, database pings, AML screening, as well as transaction monitoring to further deter fraud. So the big question is, how can Jumio help in the fight against financial crime? We are now in an ever-evolving digital world. Verifying customers' real-world identity against their digital one is critical to keep fraudsters out. We know that cybercriminals become more and more savvy these days, which is why mitigating fraud risk is essential for any businesses. We understand the different threat vectors that currently exist, such as synthetic identity theft, first-party fraud, as well as social engineering. Based on Gartner's market report, we also know that digital transformation is a trend that will continue in the future. Additionally, Jumio also aware that digital transformation that is happening in the financial institutions has really accelerated due to the recent pandemic or the current pandemic. So lots of players are speeding up their adoption plans. Technologies are moving from people-centric to AI-centric. It is not enough for businesses to onboard good customers. They also need to make sure that good customers are continuously checked and monitored. Businesses will have to make sure that their digital transformation initiative can deter fraud and meet compliance mandates, while at the same time not to negatively impact the overall user experience. Jumio offers end-to-end identity-proving solution for businesses who wants to strike that right balance between strong fraud detection and a positive user experience. Our roadmap revolves around improving the speed of identity verification, accuracy level, and integration for additional fraud signals. Jumio has actually moved from a solution to provide online identity verification services to an online KYC, AML, and onboarding platforms that helps modern businesses manage their digital identities of their online users. Few of the available tools for businesses, for example, data validation, where we are adding more and more data validation checks and cross-checking the data that we extract with other providers to introduce additional fraud checking signals. For example, we look into integration with different databases to check whether an individual address is actually valid, or for the individual's inclusion in global or regional sanctions, watch lists, and PEPs data. We also look into integration with other regional databases, such as the DMV database in the USA. Jumio can also quickly validate an individual against our own block list, which is done by looking at the history of legitimate or fraudulent transactions across our database of historical ID and identity verification. So while Jumio identity verification verifies the authenticity of an ID document, for example, a passport, as well as the corroborating selfie, these additional data validation and checks in the background provides additional fraud signals to businesses that could help them build stronger risk profile. We also are investing in other fraud signals that focus on the reputation and risk assessment of the end user's mobile device or smartphone. The device reputation makes available data on known device profiles, account profiles, and associations as evidence of fraud, as well as abuse attempts submitted by customers. Businesses can create evidence-based rules, which is based on previous fraud evidence added by a subscriber related to the user's device or related to an associated device or account. We continuously investing in cutting edge technologies to improve our automated security checks. We are looking to introduce more advanced biometric face recognition and liveness presence detection technologies to prevent sophisticated spoofing attacks. And our KYX platform is a what you see is what you get orchestration layer that lets businesses to determine the order and sequencing of various fraud checks, liveness detection, database pings, and identity verification processes based on the customer's needs and use case requirements. In relation to transaction monitoring, we are aware that every financial transactions that your business handles has the potential to be used to fund terrorists, human traffickers, and all other related criminals. That is why our transaction monitoring is at the heart of AML programs and is a regulatory requirement. Jumio is developing incremental functionalities to automatically monitor these transactions, detect suspicious activities, manage investigation, and file suspicious activity reports. And lastly, Jumio is also continuing to invest in the overall user experience to make it easier for good customers to get onboarded, and at the same time, harder for fraudster to pass the different automated checks within the user journey. We are working on further improvements within our mobile SDK and web solutions, from small improvements like supporting additional languages in our front end to a lot more fundamental improvements, such as integrating the latest technologies like NFC-based verification within our solution. Okay, and with that, hopefully I managed to share with you how Jumio can help businesses fight different types of financial crimes, keeping fraudsters out and rapidly converting good customers. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing any questions from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dion. We do have a couple of questions. Bear with me because I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen because the question box has disappeared. Cool. Anonymous attendee. Can't remember exactly when this question was asked during the presentation, but what if the official document is fraudulent? It was the question asked, Dion.
Okay, that's a good question. So a quick response to that is that if the official document is fraudulent, then I would say after completing the verification process, either Jumio identify that as a fraudulent document based on the security features, because we do identify them, meaning sometimes these fraudsters are not too specific or detailed when it comes to different holograms or ghost images or even the font. So we can easily just go back to the business and say that, you know, hey, this is actually a fraudulent document because it does not match the templates and all these hundreds and thousands of the same document that we've seen previously.
Cool, awesome. Right, fantastic. Questions are coming in thick and fast. So next one, Richard says, great presentation. So nice positive feedback there first.
Good.
Does Jumio interface with background checks sourced from the intelligence services, please, e.g. GCHQ?
That is something that we are continuously putting into our roadmap at the moment. We don't, I believe we don't have the specific integration with GCHQ. However, like I said, we already are thinking about integration with the DMV, for example. So if the requirement is there, it's definitely something that we can actually support, and that is all because of this orchestration layer that I mentioned earlier. The fact that it will allow businesses to pick and choose whichever services from Jumio that they actually want in order for them to actually build their risk profile.
Brilliant, thank you. Just to let people know, I will share the links to the upcoming events into the chat, so we'll sort that out for you. A question from Richard, what's the difference between image search and face lookup?
Okay, so good question. So the image search is something as a feature that we put in place because we know that sometimes non-sophisticated fraudster try to use ID documents that they find online. We're talking about just searching using an online search tool to say fake UK driving license and use that to pass the check. Now that is something that we validate. So if, for example, the image is available on, let's say, Google, then we can quickly identify that, yep, that is actually a fraudulent document. While face lookup is actually something that Jumio has, where we compare a picture, a selfie of someone to all of the selfies and all the pictures that we have collected over 300 million transactions and see if we actually already have the person's image. This is in relation to, for example, someone try to use the same face on multiple IDs. So we can quickly identify and we can quickly respond to our customers to say, this is potentially a fraudulent case where the same face is seen in different ID documents.
Cool, fantastic, thank you. My good friend Toby has made it into the front row and he is asking, what is the #1 challenge your clients face in ID verification?
Again, another good question. I think the #1 challenge is to strike that balance between actually building a robust risk profile against the actual user experience. We don't want good customers to be held back. We don't want us to slow down their onboarding process, for example, just because they have to go through 10 or 20 checks. So I think that is the main challenge. How can we actually let good customers in as quickly as possible, whilst at the same time, let the fraudster out?
Cool. I think we might have time for 2 more. Yeah, we do. We're good for time. So Alan asks, how can Jumio help with detecting money mules?
Yep. So that is related to our transaction monitoring. That is potentially related more on our transaction monitoring, where, for example, we can set up rules. Let's say in the US, if you make transaction less than certain amount, then you won't get flagged with IRS. But if someone's actually making regular transaction of the same amount over a period of time, then our transaction monitoring will flag that up for the businesses and quickly kind of identify these trends and patterns and say this is potentially a risky transaction or potentially a money mules.
Cool. One more coming in from Marie. Hey Marie, good to see you, or not see you, but to receive your question. What is your view on EIDAS and the use of electronic identification?
That is something new. Yes, I think that is something that we could potentially explore more in the future. Once globally we start using that kind of identity proving methods, but at the moment, based on the experience that we have and based on requirements from our customers, we believe that physical ID and selfie are the most used methods or identity verification method that is still valid for a long period of time.
Cool, thank you. And Eva asks, can you verify business clients?
Can we verify business customers? Yes and no. It depends on how the verification needs to happen. I mean, obviously we support eKYC. If it's for eKYB, normally what we do is that we work with our customers to find out who is the end user, who is for a business, the owner or the company director, so that we can actually target directly to this individual to identify him or herself on behalf of the business.
Great, thank you. Right, there were a couple more questions that came in, but just a little bit too late. We don't have time to answer them, but I will share them with Dion afterwards. And we'll, if it's okay, Dion will come back to you with the answers. Cool, fantastic, thank you. So let me go back to sharing my screen and introduce to you our second partner in ComplyAdvantage. Again, ComplyAdvantage is one of the FFE sponsors, and we're super grateful to have them be part of the community for this year. And also, it's great to have ComplyAdvantage involved because they have been a strong supporter of the FinTech community since their inception also. So delighted to welcome Will to the floor. Will, over to you.
Thanks, JP. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just get control of the slides. Excellent. So, as mentioned, my name is Will. I'm a sales director at ComplyAdvantage. My role here for the last 4 years is to help support our clients, specifically across fintech payments and digital banking, in providing financial crime insights to help put the client in control and effectively manage AML and counter-terrorist financing policies and processes more effectively. So what we wanted to talk to you today about is just to spend 15 to 20 minutes explaining exactly what ComplyAdvantage does, and hopefully we can open up with plenty of time to answer some questions. Before I go through the actual product and what we do, what we'd first like to explain and talk about is the problem space that we saw 6 or 7 years ago when we were founded. So we're all aware that AML technology is not a new space. This has been around for several decades. However, it is a space up until the last 8 or 9 years ago lacked any type of innovation. Many systems were ring-fenced by larger companies, and the industry generally was very much saturated by just a few large vendors, and that saw a lack of competition. And from that, regardless of industry, we see the same thematic issues come across our desks every day. So what we generally end up finding in the AML space from clients is struggling with third-party data sets that are siloed across different platforms, different solutions. There's a very archaic way in which AML data is generated in legacy incumbent solutions, which provide periodic updates, somewhat stagnated data using ineffective web scrapers and human researchers, which can sometimes fail to give you the right information quick enough to keep up with the demands of today's digital economy. That's coupled with legacy software solutions that are somewhat very difficult to tailor to a risk-based approach. Again, very akin to a commonality now in fintech, where we're seeing a risk-based approach needing to be applied that is not a one-size-fits-all approach from, let's say, the legacy banking environment. All of these issues with incumbent technology can often cost the company in inefficiency, high false positives, a lot of human cost in terms of really well-trained compliance teams having to deal with tedious amounts of manual work, sifting through false positives, rather than doing what they're there to do in terms of making high quality, easy decisions on where there is a risk and safeguarding the business. That as an issue is somewhat coupled by the fact that the environment itself is becoming more and more complex to deal with. So risk is ever evolving. The demand for real-time payments, digital ecosystems means that there are a lot more different ways that entities and individuals can launder money and facilitate the financing of terrorism. Regulations are becoming more complex to keep up with these trends and this analysis. We've seen obviously the transposition of more and more money laundering directives becoming thick and fast. And so coupled with the legacy technology, this is quite a difficult space to work in. So what we have designed is a new solution to solve old problems. And what we actually provide is a fully automated real-time solution that can provide screening and monitoring to help you control your AML policies and processes that fits within your ecosystem. This is a completely modular cloud-based product that's capable of providing customer screening and monitoring against known risk data like sanction lists, whether that's a global sanction list or a local regulatory warnings list or trading suspension, asset freezes, etc., all the way through to politically exposed persons and adverse information and media. Coupled with that, we also provide coverage of transaction risk management. This can include anything from real-time sanction screening of transactions and detecting high-risk scenarios like high-risk countries before payments are accepted or processed, and full transaction monitoring to detect suspicious activity in a seamless workflow. All of these modules are integrated by our two-way RESTful API, which means we can connect this to your client ecosystem. the purpose of ComplyAdvantage is to specifically solve the problems in your space for anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing as a specialist tool that will, again, seamlessly connect to a KYC platform, a core banking system, or even your in-house platforms and tools. What's particularly unique about ComplyAdvantage and what we have built is that this is an entirely proprietary solution. So whilst many solutions out there will focus very much on the technology side of things in terms of improving match rates, improving workflow, which are all very important, it's very often that that is then coupled with the same legacy incumbent risk data space, which means eventually we're going to hit a plateau of how well we can optimize our systems and how well we can detect true risk. So what ComplyAdvantage has built is, actually ComplyAdvantage was one of the very first regulatory technologies to apply AI and machine learning to the risk data space. And we have created the only real-time risk database in the world. Why this is important is that this gives us a truly end-to-end process when screening clients, when understanding potential risk at the onboarding stage, whether we're screening a counterparty or an intermediary during the transaction process, we're able to understand at that very point in time, is there true risk? So by leveraging, again, new technology like supervised machine learning, we're able to go out to publicly available risk data and collate this into clearer, structured risk profiles from over 200 countries and territories that allow us to give you a greater depth and breadth of information whilst reducing the noise. Some key factors we can give you to kind of benchmark the success we've had in generating this real-time risk data is our sanction feeds, for example, which are updated on average every 15 minutes. The value of that can be exponential in terms of reducing the risk gap, whilst we're really trying hard as an ecosystem and as a financial services space to facilitate real-time payments and instant connectivity. That puts even more pressure on compliance teams to make sure that we know at that very point in time, can we release that payment, and are we confident that that's a safe decision to take? So being able to screen real-time data that is updated in minutes is really important in helping us understand the risk at that point in time. Moreover, we can guarantee that things like politically exposed persons, we guarantee that 100% of our PEP profiles are checked for updates every day. Sorry, I've got some issues with these slides, bear with me. So 100% of PEP profiles can be checked for updates every day. Again, making sure that our data is not static, it's constantly evolving and growing, and making sure that you can truly understand the potential risk of a client at onboarding and during the monitoring process. Then into adverse media, due to our supervised machine learning process, we're actually able to analyze over 10 million different news articles every single day to really help you understand if there is risk within your profile. Again, why is it important that this is done in real time? It's not just a case of providing quicker sanctions data, it's also giving you the right information that you need to make a clear, concise, and confident decision when you're onboarding a customer, when you get a monitoring flag, or when you're processing transactions. For example, are we onboarding someone who is just politically exposed? Or are we dealing with someone who is a local county council member, but has also been found with a predicate offence association, or someone who is also being investigated for bribery and corruption? This will massively impact your decision and how you risk rate that client. And the importance of these connections are not available in standard PEP lists and just generic siloed data sets. So we can connect this to our platform. And as a recap, what we can provide is a process that removes all of that noise. So this animation is actually an example of how our natural language processing will pull out specific information from an article, let's say, to be able to understand the true context here. Is there a crime being committed, or has just a keyword been picked up and it actually has nothing to do with financial crime? All of our data is taken from sources that are verified, reputable, traceable. It helps us remove fake news, noise, victims from crimes, thus reducing false positives and helping us focus on the data that's important to us. This is also fully aligned to the FATF taxonomy, so it's really well explainable to regulators. And again, it's very heavily focused on the risk information that you're concerned about to save you time. So as a quick recap on the products that we provide, there are 3 services or modules that you can leverage ComplyAdvantage for, be it through one of our partners or through us directly. So we can conduct AML screening and monitoring. This is allowing us to check your clients at the onboarding stage against sanctions, PEPs, adverse media. This also allows us to continuously monitor your clients in the background, so we can whitelist your customers once they're onboarded, and we can check them every single day without you having to do any manual processes or batch screening, to make sure that we can give you a proactive notification should someone be newly flagged as someone involved, as I say, in a new sanction regime or something that we've picked up as part of a predicate offence or something through adverse media. This also comes with a highly configurable matching technology so that we can make sure we can reduce false positives, but completely align to your risk-based approach. The purpose of this system is to align to your risk appetite and understand where you're conducting business, so we can change the algorithms to pick up Cyrillic matching with Arabic names, Russian, Asian characters, etc. The second stream is then transaction screening. Again, this is where we can actually conduct real-time transaction screening against sanction lists updated in minutes, ensuring that you know that your transactions are safe before they're facilitated to or from your clients. With intelligent whitelisting and our two-way API, again, it's a fantastic way that we can boost customer satisfaction by processing transactions straight through if they don't need to be stopped, but making sure that we can stop that one risky transaction in real time before it goes out the door, and we can safeguard the business. The final service then is transaction monitoring. So again, this works in harmony with the other AML platforms and processes that we've described. This gives you a real-time, fully automated workflow of monitoring transactions. One of the most important points here, as JP alluded to, is we've been supporting the fintech community for a very long time. So we've got 7 years experience of working with digital banks, fintechs, insurtechs, companies in the crypto space, lending, and so on. So this actually allows us to deploy industry-leading rule sets that are designed for fintech, for cross-border payments, for facilitating transactions, regardless of the currency, whether that's a fiat currency or a cryptocurrency. This enables us to conduct transaction monitoring in a really robust way that is, again, explainable to regulators and partner banks. It's consolidated with transaction screening and allowing us to have a single customer view and account-based monitoring. So whether we're just monitoring our direct customers' activity, or if we're onboarding a merchant and we're actually monitoring the activity of our merchant's end consumer, this can all be done in one seamless process. The real-time facilitation also allows us to react as a compliance team to those alerts as and when they happen. Historically, most transaction monitoring processes have been forcibly retrospective and done through batches. The issue with that is it gives the compliance team no control. We have to react to flags once transactions have already passed, potentially days, weeks, or even months after the files are provided for review. A real-time facilitation doesn't mean we necessarily have to stop a transaction for your transaction monitoring rules, but it allows us to give you an instant flag, an instant alert, so that you can react to the potential risk. And should the risk escalate an account, it actually allows us to apply wider safety nets to freeze transactions, again, to ensure that we can safeguard the business. As a final piece, something we always recommend to our clients before selecting vendors is understanding how they work with you once you've gone live. So all of our services, we're really proud to say, include a dedicated customer success team that help you implement the solution, but are also there day by day once you go live. This assists in training, sharing best practices that we see from the 650 clients we work with in the payments and banking space, over 50 countries. And this helps lead to some really fantastic case studies that you can find on our website. Again, the purpose of providing this proprietary solution with new technology is helping us control operational ROI, helping us onboard clients and process payments faster, reducing inefficiencies, as you can see by some of the figures on the screen here, allowing account opening in days, not weeks. But it's also providing a process that's clearly explainable, clearly robust, and specific to your business, so that we can help respond to the requirements of regulators and banking partners. To wrap that up, another point of reflection really is selecting an AML vendor is about what we can solve today, but also how we can prevent risk tomorrow for you. You should look as an AML partner as a partner and someone that's going to help you grow and scale. So we can share with you some insights in what we're doing this year. For example, we have two new launches and products coming out this year. One is an initiative called ComplyLaunch. This is going to be an application service that you can check out on our website. It's going live very, very soon, which will actually allow us to facilitate very tailored pricing and tailored bespoke services that open up our solutions to very early stage companies. We want the solutions of tomorrow to be able to leverage the AML platforms that are around today. We don't believe that industry-leading AML technology should be ring-fenced to tier 1 budgets, and we want to make sure that we can really enhance the capability of the community in preventing financial crime. So if you're a seed stage, Series A or Series B company, please do check it out, and we're able to actually work with you in those kind of difficult times in making sure that you can scale the business safely, get access to our APIs, and actually deploy a solution that's going to safeguard the processes for the future. The final piece to that then is a corporate onboarding product. So within the next 2 weeks, we're actually launching our MVP of our KYB solution. This is an MVP version. So this is going to be connected to our customer screening module that already conducts sanction PEPs and adverse media screening. What we're doing with our data is incorporating company information. So by the end of Q2, Q3 this year, we're hoping to have that ready to go globally. This means we'll have global corporate risk data of over 400 million entities of companies and directors. This will allow us again to seamlessly onboard corporates and merchants by discovering the company structure and directors, and instantly being able to connect them to our sanctions, PEPs, and adverse media risk, whilst then continually being able to monitor that ongoing structure. This will help us again provide better connected data, combined AML, KYB solutions in conjunction with transaction screening and monitoring, which is all built for integration. So again, whether you're using this directly or plugging in along with other great vendors like Jumio and your core banking systems, this can be facilitated in a completely modular fashion. So that's it from me. I've tried to keep that high level and leave plenty of time for questions. So thanks very much for listening, and we look forward to any questions you might have.
Fantastic, Will. And yes, you do have some questions, so you haven't got away with it completely. Again, I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen to actually find these questions. Cool. Oh, there's a few. Within your PEP database, do you have a field for timeout? Oh, sorry, bear with me, because do you have a... Let me make that bigger. Cool. Within your PEP database, do you have a field for time out of office? For example, if a PEP is no longer in the office, then you can choose to no longer screen them.
It's a really good question, and we see customers often struggle with the policies around PEP data. Some people argue once a PEP, always a PEP, and some people obviously follow different obligations around how long they should be in office. So what we aim to do with our data is always provide time in office and the time of when they were in office. So again, if it's something historic, you'll have the period of legislation. So yes.
Cool, fantastic. And Douglas asks, using your system, what is the average length of time to onboard a new new UK customers?
That's a wonderful question. We are obviously only part of a process. We're only looking after the AML piece. We shared obviously that case study with Santander, where we actually were part of several solutions that were deployed, which reduced the onboarding time from 12 days to 2. But again, that's looking at an entire corporate onboarding process for, I think, corporate and investment banking. If we're looking at, a more straightforward product and just looking at the AML process, these results are returned in typically 20 milliseconds. So that can facilitate real-time onboarding, but I would say that with a caveat that will depend on your other processes as well.
Great, thank you. Carrie asks, can ComplyAdvantage integrate with law firm practice management software to identify conflicts?
Yeah, we'd love to talk to you more about that. The idea of the integration is we have an open RESTful API with webhooks. So the purpose of that is that it can flexibly connect to whatever systems you're using to pick up that data and then screen it against the risk information.
Cool. Some nice feedback here by Richard. Thank you, Richard, for all of that. I'm going to try and pick one of your questions. Oh, there's so many, this is quite a random one, but I'll ask it nevertheless. Which venture capital partner do you champion for AML startup funding?
Wow, I gotta be careful what I say next. I think there are so many. What I can share is that we've been through. We last year went through our Series C fund round. So we've had the privilege of working with an awful lot of VC partners. It's been a really exciting time. We are personally VC backed by both Index Venture Funds and Balderton Capital, amongst many others. So those are ones that I have personal experience with that I could certainly recommend.
Cool. I hope that was in some way useful, Richard. Mark asked, have you thought about potential solution to gain access to public UBO registers in the EU?
Yes, so that's actually already being integrated into our KYB product, which we mentioned at the end. So at the moment, we're connected to UK Companies House and some of the US corporate data as part of our MVP, which is going live at the end of March. And then what we're doing from there is rolling that out to the other public registers, as well as building our own proprietary database, which takes us from March being just UK Companies House to the end of kind of Q2, Q3 being that connected database of over 400 million entities.
Cool, fantastic. That's all we have time for. Richard, I will share the rest of your formal questions with Will separately, and he might be able to answer all of those, or perhaps have a call with you even better to go through anything you want in a little bit more detail. Cool, thank you very much, Will.
Thanks, guys.
You're more than welcome. Great to have you. So next up, we have our colleagues from Rusi. Rusi have been fantastic supporters of the FFE since its conception. They are, in fact, a founding member or a founding partner, I should say, along with FINTRAIL. We have supported Rusi on many projects and continue to do so, and look forward to continue to do so. We also facilitate Rusi training, and earlier this week, I should say, our co-founder Gemma Rogers was announced as an associate fellow. So to share more on the Rusi story, I'm delighted to introduce you to Tom Keatinge. Over to you, Tom.
JP, thank you very much. Hopefully you can see the screen okay. Give us a thumbs up if you can. Can you see my screen, JP? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thanks very much, JP. Thanks to the FFE for inviting us today. I guess I would give a warning, which is, having been deluged in tech speak and great tech ideas for the last hour, this is going to be a bit slower paced because we are a near 200-year-old think tank. So just forgive me for the next 20 minutes. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the Center for Financial Crime and Security Studies at Rusi, and in a line, what we aim to be are specialists on the intersection of illicit finance and securities. I'll take you through kind of who we are, what we do, and all of that. So let's start with the question which I often get asked is, what on earth is Rusi? And, you know, just a selection of some of the answers that you often hear from people. Is it a typo? That's one of my favorite ones. Does it stand for something? Okay, that's getting closer to the truth. Is it something to do with Russia? You'd be amazed how often on badges at conferences, people somehow seem to think that I am from Russia. Or is it something to do with tanks and the military? And that's obviously from people who perhaps have a better idea of what Rusi actually is. So, oops, sorry. So what is Rusi? So Rusi was founded by the Duke of Wellington in 1835, and it stands for the Royal United Services Institute. It is, we claim, the world's oldest think tank on defense and security. So we are a research institute that covers a whole range of issues that relate to defense and security, whether that is military strategy, counterterrorism, international security studies, so sort of geopolitics, nuclear proliferation, cybercrime, organized crime and policing, and financial crime and security studies, which is the program that I run and that we set up in 2014. And like any think tank, our bread and butter is writing research, convening workshops and events, and really trying to spread around to socialize good practice, good ideas in our particular areas of study, and of course, in our case, financial crime. So what is the CFCS? What are we and what do we do is one question we'll talk about over the next few minutes. What has financial crime got to do with defense and security? Like, what is a financial crime research program doing at a place like Rusi? And where does the FFE fit into all of this? JP gave you a hint, but perhaps I can lift the veil a bit and explain a bit further. So firstly, what are we? So we, as I said at the start, view ourselves as specialists on the intersection of illicit finance and security, kind of try and understand how these two issues rub up against each other, because clearly they do, and clearly people spend a lot of time and money and investment trying to address the issues that result from that intersection. We try and then contribute to the fight against financial crime. We're not producing ID software or the kinds of tools that ComplyAdvantage or others are producing, but we try and produce research and analysis that is rooted in action. So, a lot of people say, well, think tanks are academic institutions, and yes, of course, they are. Our research, as some of you will know, runs very slowly. We have to have it peer reviewed and all that sort of stuff to make sure that it meets academic standards. But ultimately, what we're aiming for are ideas that can be taken by policymakers, can be taken by the private sector, and can be implemented to strengthen the integrity of the financial system. So that's kind of what we are about. And in doing that, we don't just focus on the UK. Obviously, financial crime is an international problem. And so we aim to equip the international community with the tools that they need, the knowledge that they need in order to more effectively combat the threats of illicit finance. So you've got to understand the problem. You've got to kind of be able to identify the problem properly and then put into practice measures to disrupt the problem. And that might be better KYC or what better ID verifications we've heard about already today, but it might also be deploying security tools against targets that are generating illicit finance. So during the fight against Islamic State at its height, the most effective, or one of the most effective tools that was being used against them was restricting their access to finance, restricting their ability to raise money through the sale of oil or smuggling or receiving donations or whatever it might have been. So that's a very real example of where finance and security intersect. Another core part of what we do, indeed, it's the reason that the program was originally set up in 2014, is to leverage partnership in fighting financial crime. So many of you will be familiar with what we have in the UK, the JMLIT, the Joint Money Laundering Intelligence Task Force. Other brands are available in other countries. But that idea that the public sector and the private sector should work together to combat financial crime is really critical and is I think we believed at the time in 2014 and continue to believe will represent the step change that we need in order to be more effective in stopping financial crime. And so the program at Rusi grew out of a conference that was held at the Institute in 2014, at the end of which someone far-sighted said, well, maybe Rusi should set up a research program to look at financial crime and security. And I had just left 20 years of investment banking at JP Morgan. I was sitting in the audience. I spoke to the right or the wrong person, depending on how you think about it. And the next thing, he had very eloquently persuaded me to help them write the business plan, help them set up the program. And then once we'd raised some money, we are a charity. Once we'd raised some money through a sponsorship and donation, we began in 2014. And we've tracked this idea of partnership ever since. And obviously the FFE tries to promote partnership through the way in which it engages with law enforcement and policymakers in the various countries in which it operates, and to bring them closer to the private sector, to the fintech community. Because at the end of the day, if you're sitting in an office in the Home Office or you're sitting at the National Crime Agency in the UK, your understanding of the way industry works is, of course, not particularly deep unless you go and learn about it, or unless the industry comes to you and helps you learn about them. So partnership is absolutely critical in responding to financial crime and is central to what we do. And then lastly, and connected to that, I mean, ultimately, we believe that confronting financial crime is a collective responsibility. There are in any organization, there are people who want to do business. You know, there are people trying to run fast forwards. And then there are those who are saying, well, hang on a minute, we need to think about governance. We need to think about what our products, what risks our products are going to pose to the integrity of the financial system. On the government side, you see, for example, in the UK, those perhaps in the business department who want companies' house to be quick and efficient and cheap. And then you've got those perhaps in other departments saying, well, hang on a minute, if we make it really quick and really cheap and really efficient, perhaps it will end up being a vehicle for financial crime. Obviously, in recent years, those people have turned out to be right. And so, you know, amongst other things, we try and suggest to governments around the world, including the UK, how they might strengthen the system, because ultimately, you know, financial crime affects us all, and it is a collective responsibility to tackle it. So that's some of our philosophy. So what does it have to do with defense and security? Well, I mean, I've touched on that, but for example, you don't really have to do much more than open the newspaper these days to read about the malign influence of countries that are seeking to undermine democratic societies like the UK, like across Europe, across the United States. And much of that is driven by money. Of course, it's not dirty money necessarily. It might even be money from the coffers of a state. But nonetheless, that money has malign intent. So right there is an example of where finance and financial crime connects with security. Another more perhaps visceral example, there are sanctions on North Korea. And of course, we all know that North Korea enjoys challenging us by evading those sanctions. So understanding those evasion tactics, ensuring that the front line around the world, banks and others, are aware of their obligations under international sanctions, are aware of the sorts of evasion tactics that are used by North Korea and other proliferators is really important. Again, right there is an example of where financial crime and international security connect. Terrorist financing, I talked about already, but again, understanding money flows connected with terrorist groups or the way in which individual actors finance themselves is again a matter of security, national and international security. Organized crime in the UK, serious and organized crime is viewed as a top tier national security threat. So we should clearly try and understand the finance related to organized crime, trafficking of wildlife, of human beings, all those sorts of things are essentially linked to defense and security. And so whilst, yes, of course, combating financial crime is a technical issue, it's a compliance issue, it's also, we would argue, an issue to do with defense and security, and therefore it made perfect sense in 2014. It makes even more sense to my mind now we've been running for the best part of 7 years. It definitely makes sense for an organization like Rusi to house our research program. Okay, so to move on, where then does the FFE fit in all of this? So in 2016, I think it was, I was sitting in my office at Rusi, which, by the way, our office is on, well, it's normally anyway on Whitehall, kind of roughly opposite Downing Street. So when we reopen, do come and visit us. But I was sitting there and I had a visit from somebody from an unnamed FinTech company, payments company, that said, oh, I want to come and see you and I want to have a sort of chat about financial crime. So we had this meeting at Rusi, and I listened to this guy, and to summarize it, basically he said, well, I'm in London because I'm having my annual financial crime briefing meeting with a consultant that we use. And I think it's good to be up to date once a month on what's going on in financial crime. And I sort of said, well, but what do you do the other 30 days of the month about financial crime? No, we just speak to our consultant once a month. And I had one of those kind of facepalm moments where I thought, this is really bad. Here we've got an organization that's moving money around the world pretty successfully. And they think that having a check-in once a month to understand what the latest financial crime trends is really the right thing to do. And so, as luck would have it, it was at the time where I was getting to know Gemma and Rob at FinTrail, and we put our heads together and decided that really it would make sense to try and create some kind of forum where fintech companies could come and share their financial crime experiences, share their financial crime, what are they doing to mitigate financial crime threats, and really try and mainstream the concept of financial crime into the fintech community. And so the FFE was born, and I have to say I'm truly delighted in the way that FinTrail and then with the kind of energy of JP have taken it from what was a small group of people sitting around a table in a rather hot and stuffy office at Rusi several years ago to what it is now, and congratulations to everybody who's made that happen. And you know, we back to my point about the importance of partnership and collective responsibility. It really is a great example of partnership and collective responsibility in action. So yes, as I say, Rusi and FinTrail kind of came together. Really, the Rusi blob should be much smaller, because FinTrail has been the driving force behind this. But that was the genesis of the FFE. So who's in our team? We started with just me and a recent PhD graduate from Edinburgh University in 2014. And when I put this slide together, I suddenly thought, wow, we're getting quite big. So that's the team of full-time staff that we have at Rusi. So a range of different experiences and expertise, those who have worked in looking at corruption in Latin America, for example, those that have worked at the UN, looking at terrorist financing, those that have worked in the sanctions world, those that have worked in the fintech world, those that are kind of interested in study cryptocurrencies, etc., etc. And this is the core team of us who work together within the organization. So we've grown to be pretty big, which is expensive, but that's my problem to keep finding the donors to fund us. But then we also have, as JP alluded to, we have a really great what we call associate fellow network. So our associate fellows are people that kindly agree to carry the card, as it were, to represent us as and when it makes sense. Sometimes we get the opportunity to commission them to do work for us as consultants, but other times they chair events for us, they help us with introductions, they generally commit time to helping us grow and to helping us develop and to helping us make connections. And we have associate fellows around the world, from Australia, in Hong Kong, in the United States, across Europe, various places. And they provide us with invaluable support and ideas and challenge what we are planning on doing. So what are our current research topics? So I mentioned that obviously research is at the heart of what we do. As part of all the research we do, we convene a lot of events, workshops of 25, 30 people to brainstorm projects or project ideas we have, or to review outputs of our research and critique those. I mean, never thought I'd say one of the great things about the pandemic, but one of the silver linings, let's say, is that we're now able to hold these sorts of workshops, convening people from all over the world. We had one the other morning on financial inclusion and financial crime standards that was hosted by Isabella Chase, who a lot of you will know. And we had people calling in from Australia, from across Europe, early risers in the United States. We even had someone call in from Bhutan. So, that's not the sort of thing that we could have done in the old days. We'd have sort of flown people to London and incurred all sorts of costs. But now, actually, we're certainly finding that the way in which people are taken to this kind of virtual meeting has really improved our way of working. So our current research topics, which are supported by these various events, some of them are public. You can find our events on the Rusi website. So a lot of work on sanctions and proliferation finance. So again, back to the North Korea story. Continued work on public-private partnerships and information sharing, work on cryptocurrencies, virtual asset service providers, all this, the developments at the Financial Action Task Force around, how are we going to regulate, how are we going to secure the financial system in such a way that cryptocurrencies can flourish, but can flourish in a controlled manner, not undermine the integrity of the financial system. Financial inclusion, interesting, those of you who took part perhaps in the Chatham House conference a couple of weeks ago, it's interesting to hear David Lewis, the Executive Secretary of the FATF, talk about the fact that FATF is going to start a work stream on the unintended consequences of the FATF standards. We all know phrases like de-risking and the like, which have occurred as people have perhaps been overzealous in their implementation of financial crime standards. So financial inclusion, very important. Perhaps for this group, Financial Crime 2.0 project is a project that looks at the threats and opportunities of new technologies. This year's work is on artificial intelligence, and that gives us a chance to play around with deep fakes and all those ways in which systems can be, ID systems can perhaps be spoofed, but also, of course, the benefits that artificial intelligence can perhaps bring. And, this is a good example of where our job is to sit in the middle of the debate and help people understand help policymakers understand what does artificial intelligence really mean, what's it all about. Far be it for me to say that the industry might overhype itself sometimes, but a modicum of consideration is sometimes needed. And then there are a bunch of other issues we look at. Maybe one other I'll mention is the illicit finance and security work we do, looking at the way in which the financial systems in certain countries perhaps act as vulnerabilities to the wider community. So we're all familiar with the difficulties that places like Latvia have had, for example, as facilitators of many of the laundromats that have been reported by organizations like the OCCRP. So that's a good example, again, of where finance and security rub up against each other. Penultimate slide. So who do we talk to? Our job is as much about meeting organizations, trying to educate them, build awareness, dare I say, kind of influence them to improve their systems. So that takes us around the world. We deal regularly with the United Nations Security Council and the various committees that are set up around the UN. Obviously, the Financial Action Task Force is a very important player in this. The European Commission, again, an important and influential body that we have to deal with. Then there are, of course, a range of financial intelligence units around the world, whether it's Austrac or the Monetary Authority of Singapore, as the supervisor, at any rate, in Singapore. Just an example, the AMLC, which is the Financial Intelligence Unit in the Philippines. Of course, our friends on the other side of the Atlantic in the Department of the Treasury and FinCEN, industry bodies like UK Finance, and of course, its members, the FFE, not to forget. And then every now and again, we get a chance to go and give some advice to somebody who we hope might one day listen to what we're saying. This was the last outing that myself and a colleague made for real in March last year before lockdown, when we got the chance to go to number 10. I hesitate to say that Boris wasn't in, but never mind. It was a good, it was a fun trip. So yeah, that's us. If you want to know more about us, then we have a newsletter that you can sign up to via the Rusi website. We've got a new social media manager who's been brilliant at promoting all our work, Olivia. So you can find us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and then we run, as one or two people have mentioned in the Q&A box, a podcast called The Suspicious Transaction Report. Current season is looking at subtitled Policy into Practice, so kind of talking to people who've had to implement the policies that are dreamt up in the ministries around the world or at the FATF. And then we run a lot of webinars, public access webinars, which we've started to turn into podcasts for people who want to listen on the go rather than sit at their desk and watch. And so that series is called Financial Crime Insights. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. I do want to just add one other point, actually, which I've forgotten to mention before I hand back to JP. ACAMS has come up several times during the discussion this afternoon. And we have a very active relationship with ACAMS as well. have done a number of surveys with ACAMS on proliferation finance, on cryptocurrencies, and we've just closed a survey looking at understanding and awareness and attitudes towards digital ID. So we're processing the findings on that at the moment, and we'll look forward to sharing those with everybody soon. On that, JP, back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the insight into the genesis of the FFE. I was hoping that was what you were going to cover a little bit of, because I didn't want to spoil the story. And plus, I haven't actually heard it from your perspective before, so it was nice to hear. A quick question then from the audience. Richard. Richard also compliments the outstanding podcast, which I think is also now in its third season as well. And he asks, how can AI and blockchain sectors best support the reboot of Companies House?
Well, I think pretty much everybody, including my granny, could support the reboot of Companies House. So we actually have a film coming out, which we've made with Oliver Bullough, who many of you might know, the journalist and polemicist on the topic of financial crime. We've got a film coming out on Monday that he's made with us, which is all about Companies House and bringing integrity to the UK system. Look, I think fundamentally, it amazes me what researchers with an Excel spreadsheet can do with Companies House data. So I think first of all, yes, of course, it's great to employ get all the whiz-bang new tools, but I have to say that I'm a big believer in getting the basics right before we start installing. I mean, I can remember my days at JP Morgan where we install these new systems, and then we realized that the problem with the new system was we still had reel-to-reel data systems somewhere in the bowels of the building, and these new systems just overwhelmed our central data system. So I think I would like to see more integrity in the data at Companies House. If that means we need to involve blockchain and the like, then great. If we can use AI to interrogate the data that Companies House holds and be more effective at spotting directors who sign up under the name of Mickey Mouse, then great. But frankly, I think there's a lot that can be done using the old ways at Companies House before we start trying to run before we can walk.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks for that. And just a note to everyone that I've put some useful links into the chat, which includes the Rusi events calendar for people to check out in their own time. Brilliant. Cool. Moving swiftly on. We're doing very well with time, so I'm delighted with that. Brilliant. So EFI, or Efficient Frontiers International, affectionately known as EFI, are another complementary partner of FinTrail, and I am delighted to introduce everyone to Russell Taylor and Jeff Bateman to share everything that EFI do. Over to you, gentlemen.
Okay, thanks, JP. Appreciate that. If we can just go to the next slide in terms of just to kick this off. Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, just first of all, I'd start off by saying a big thank you to FinTrail today for inviting Efficient Frontiers International to give us the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what we do. And we also look forward to joining FinTrail next week with our webinar. Very much looking forward to that. Anyway, my name is Russell Taylor. I look after the sales side of the business at EFI. I'm joined by Jeff Bateman, who's our head of operations. And we've worked very closely alongside working with our new business, our existing clients, and basically understanding their processes and working to sort of fulfill their requirements from a regulatory and their standards, etc. So what we want to do today is spend 15 to 20 minutes just providing some insight into the EFI business model and how we deliver operational excellence to our clients and how our approach makes us a little bit different. At EFI, we are specialized in delivering expertise-based services across KYC, financial crime, prevention, and operational taxes. And basically, we're trying to ensure that regulatory obligations are met and are efficient and are met in an effective way. So we just look at this diagram here, just starting off at the first point, which is the financial crime prevention framework piece. in that prevention zone. We're helping our clients to better understand the risks their businesses are exposed to, trying to put in place targeted controls so that this enables them to manage their financial crime prevention efficiently and effectively. If we then move down to this sort of KYC onboarding and the regulatory review piece, this is where we're supporting our clients by providing operational experts. So this is to support their onboarding and regular reviews. We can augment an existing team if you need extra capacity, or to deal with peak periods. So for example, you might have an increase in account openings, you might have a launch or a marketing campaign where you need additional people to help you. We can provide those teams. We can provide full teams, including analysts, team leads, or SMEs. We've got a lot of experience in onboarding for a wide range of businesses, including retail, SMEs, and wholesale banking. We've also started looking at new industries as well now. So we've started looking a little bit into cryptocurrency, into gambling, and also touching in the oil and gas sector as well. You'll see on the transaction monitoring, alert review and investigation, and obviously the subsequent SARS filing piece as well. At EFI, we've got experts that can help here sort of in the end-to-end sort of transaction monitoring process, from alert reviews and investigations to SAR filings, and obviously law enforcement liaison. We help businesses scale with financial crime functions by continuing to meet those regulatory obligations. The remediation and regulatory response piece, we're now into that sort of action zone. I guess this is our bread and butter, and this is where we sort of started out as a business. And we've got significant experience in supporting organizations here with large-scale KYC remediation programs to help them with their regulatory sort of engagements. So basically, just in terms of our experts we have at EFI, we can sort of embed our experts to help give firms an opportunity to free up their internal resources, and also support firms as they go through rapid expansions and reduce dependency on key resources internally, and hopefully help you reduce your costs as well. The team at EFI, we've got basically, have access to best practices and sharing of industry knowledge. We provide a comprehensive training and continued professional development programs geared to each of the roles within the EFI environment. We like to think ourselves as agile and adaptable, and we give seamless integration with existing teams and technologies. So when we're working with organizations, whether they're financial institutions, whether they are small organizations, larger organizations, we're working with the teams within those organizations to understand their technology, understand their processes. So we work very closely with those internal teams to slowly sort of ramp up our processes with those organizations. So there's a lot of training that goes on at the beginning, but that's essential for us going forward, that our teams fully understand the technology they're going to use and the sort of processes they're going to work with. And I guess with all this, there's a key to our offering is our people. I guess they're at the heart of our business. We invest a lot of time and energy into our people, which obviously provides the best services to our clients. Now, what I want to do now is just hand over to Jeff. He's going to explain a little bit about how our best people deliver the operational excellence to our clients. And he's just going to talk through a couple of different case studies, because I think that really brings about EFI's positioning in the market, how we've helped business out in terms of their requirements, but it just brings a bit of those case studies forward. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Russell. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we're just going to walk through 4 case studies today, just bring to life some of the examples that we come across on a week-by-week basis. And the first one was, the original ask was to support SARS writing. But what happened was, once we got inside and we looked underneath the bonnet, what we found was that there was an additional support needed around transaction monitoring and very complex fraud investigations as well. Originally, it was 10 individuals that were deployed to this bank, but it soon quickly ramped up to 70 over a couple of weeks. and just shows the fast pace at which we can deploy individuals into into assignments where needed. As Russell articulated, what we did first was we try and look at the process. We try and get a deep understanding of the process and the technology that the clients use. We then went through a strategic looking at the threshold conditions that were the triggers. We looked to remove false positives, and overall we looked to streamline that process. Additionally, what we did, we standardized the collection of data from the input all the way through to the submission, which then led to a standardization of process. So if you can get a repeatable process over and over again, the analyst can work better within those parameters. If that's the case, then you can do a lot more from that, not just overall improvement of quality and a reduction in processing time. What you also get is a right reliability and resource planning. So as you can see from that example, the original ask was very short and sharp from a response point of view, but then developed into a larger piece of ask, and then adding that extra value, which is to standardize and collection of data and the processing times as well. Moving on to the second example, which is streamlining the onboarding for a digital bank. This was, again, looking at the process and the reviews around the KYC that was coming through on the onboarding process. Here we were with a vast array of knowledge that we've picked up throughout the industry and all the other accounts that we've deployed on. So bringing that knowledge into this client, what we looked to do again was reduce the response times and the increase in the client outcomes. What we found was that there was a large time that was being disparated from when the submission was happening until we were getting back to the client. And obviously we know in a digital age that every second counts. So this was taking days to respond to clients, by which time the client journey had been interrupted and somebody had abandoned that account and moved on to the next bank who was going to onboard them. So what we looked to do was review that process and get rid of wastage, and then increase that processing. So therefore, it was a quicker return to the client asking for those exceptions, potentially when they'd not gone through a straight through process. As you'll see from both of those examples, the original ask was expanded on, where the various teams were deployed inside there. And again, as Russell articulated before, the approach that we take is seamless with the team that's already in there, the in-house team, and therefore we can adapt and move around for the operational needs as and when they come up. The third particular case story that we're just going to investigate now is a fast-growing UK bank that wanted to expand its business line, but had concerns around FATCA and CRS data collection. So one of our most senior tax consultants went into this bank, helped them review that account opening process, and with the vision of making sure that it's simple and smooth for the client and making sure that the obligations were required and collected. It was a big focus on the client journey to make sure that it was seamless for them. What we also noticed when we were interrogating the data, that maybe the last submission to the HMRC needed to be potentially reviewed and then adapted and then resubmitted. So our tax consultant was part of that conversation with the revenue and helped adapt the validation tool on the onboarding space. Now, where we have our own W series tool that helps with the tax the tax ID collection, this particular client wanted to use their own particular onboarding software, and therefore we helped support and adapt that with the technology teams. Overall, there was a massive transfer of knowledge from ourselves to the client, which improved the quality and obviously improved the reporting process overall. Moving on to the fourth and final one, and as Russell went and said, this was our bread and butter when we first started up EFI, and as we've broadened our horizons. We're talking about a tier one global bank around their remediation project around KYC. So we've done a number of these over the life cycle of EFI, and we have a vast array of knowledge, as Russell articulated before as well, that we've built up in this area. So we have a high level of knowledge around multiple jurisdictions, multiple types of entities, and multiple types of clients, everything from VCs down to shipping clients to property, to very, very complex structures, again, spanning the whole world from all the jurisdictions. But most importantly, what we find with these particular cases is that there's a lot that's going right and there's a lot that's going wrong. So we're not just an outfit that sends in people. We bring in extra added value over and above. So when we went in and did the KYC remediation for one or two of these banks, it always develops into something else. So what we bring on board as well is project control and stability, as I articulated in one of the first or second example. We also brought in a level of quality program as well. So this was to give feedback between the second line and the first line, and ultimately the third line with the second line. And therefore focusing on the client's outcome and making sure that this journey is seamless, but making sure that the case is completed with a first-time success rate significantly higher than when we came on board. This was an educational process that we did with the client to make sure that they could focus on what that is, and then continually improving their staff and their outcomes for the client. One major thing that we found as well with a lot of the wholesale banks as well is around the educational side. So when I say educational, I don't actually mean talking to the analysts and advising them how to process cases. This was the wider and the broader stakeholder education. So this is when the likes of the front office don't actually engage with the process or understand what their obligations are, or senior stakeholders don't actually understand the ramifications of not getting KYC correct. So we do that as well to make sure that we can deliver on the projects that we are looking to drive forward for our clients. So we're just going to pause there for a minute or two, and I just want to thank you for allowing us to indulge ourselves with some of the examples and case studies that we've done. Just wanted to bring to life some of the types of work that we undertake for our clients.
Yeah, so Jeff, just before we move to that sort of last slide we've got, obviously in terms of the last year, etc., in terms of the lockdown, everything else that's happened, how have you adapted your operational model during the last year to sort of with everyone leaving the offices and working from home? How have you sort of adapted to that?
Okay, so everyone's bored of COVID, and obviously life has definitely changed. Where being in an office and being able to tap an analyst on the shoulder and say, "How are you getting on?" has moved away. So obviously, having that outreach and making sure that we're having that tangibility with our analysts to make sure that they understand what blocks are in front of them and support them in through that. Again, as you articulated before, and one of our big drivers is around that knowledge and that education for our staff. So we've spent a lot of time and effort building out CPD programs and developing the external qualifications as well for all our members of staff. So there's a good 40–45% of individuals who are on qualifications either internally or externally at the moment within inside our business. So really focusing on that to drive it forward for our clients.
And I think one of the other things we talked about before was, I guess, the people are the sort of biggest asset of our organization. How do you sort of look after those people, and how do you develop those people? Because obviously you're working with 150 plus people at the moment. How do you sort of work on that piece?
Yep. So the CPD program that we've developed in-house focuses on our clients and the needs of our clients. So there's everything from technical skills to soft skills to foundation skills. And depending on where that individual is in their career and their journey through their career, we can support wherever they want to. So they have the aspect of having elective CPD units, and there's also ones that they're encouraged if we think that they need to have development in that area. Or again, depending on whether they are in their career, if they're moving from a very generalized role to a very specialist role, or they're thinking of moving up to an SME, then we look at the coaching and the mentoring, and then building out their capability using that CPD and using the external qualifications.
Thanks, Jeff. That's great. I'll let you sort of finish off on the final slide, and obviously we'll take any questions. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you. If we can move to the last slide, or second to last slide. Thank you. So I'm not going to spend too much on this, but what I wanted to do was bring a couple of aspects to the forefront. So obviously we've talked about operational expertise, we've talked about our experience and our analysts, and there's an element of control. So you'll see that as a common themes through our case studies that we spoke about there. So if we just focus on people for a minute or two, as we've just spoken about, we have this blended approach around our CPD. We invest an awful lot of time trying to understand our employees, what drives them, what makes them work, what makes them tick, how we can make that work-life balance. And as JP said before, children and dogs allowed on calls, we do that as well. Often have I been on a call and had either a 3-year-old bouncing on somebody's knee or a cat walking across the screen. So, we appreciate that there are other demands away from work. So we actively encourage that with some of the activities that we do away from the workplace as well in the virtual world. As I said, we bring staff along a journey, depending on what level they are in their career. It shouldn't just be the clients that we have that go through a client journey, it's our staff that go through that as well. And what we do as well, uniquely with our members of staff, every one of them is actually encouraged when they're working with a client to make suggestions, make improvements. Now, depending on what client that is and how it might be received, obviously that might be collected and then played back to them in a playbook. But we definitely encourage every member of our staff, if they think there is a quicker or a smarter way to adapt the process that they're working in, then we encourage them to speak up. We encourage them to develop what that might look like, and then we can either speak to the client and do that, or we can find a solution and bring that to the client to make sure it's a better world for them. We talk about control. We love doing this. So I'm a massive numbers geek. So I focus a dramatic amount on this. I'm also a control freak, so that obviously goes with the numbers. But what I want to have is predictability. So I make certain guarantees to clients, and I make sure that I can deliver on that. I can honestly say, hand on heart, to this day, I have not overpromised, and I always delivered on every promise that I have done for the clients. So that's through processes or quality programs. With our unique way as well, what that means is we're very easily to be able to predict what the outcomes are from a program or a project many months in advance, and we're usually around about that part. It's unique, particularly with some of the investment banks as well that we've dealt with, that they're very, very hard to predict what's happening next week, never mind what's happening in a couple of months. So we bring our unique blend of control and visibility to the client to make sure that that happens. So just to briefly summarize, that we're not just analysts. We have a real focus on delivery, whether that's our tech division, whether that's our tax partnership, or whether that's the managed service side of it. And we understand that with every aspect and every case that we work with, that there's a client behind that every step of the way. So that brings us to the conclusion. Russell, have I missed anything?
I think that's great. Thank you. I think if there's any questions, great to answer them.
Lovely. Thanks, Russell. Thanks, Jeff. We do have one question that just came in, and I think you just mentioned it, Jeff, in your penultimate sentence. So someone asks, do you have any of your own technology products, or do you partner with others?
We do both. So as I said, I mentioned that we've got a tax tool that we've deployed over the last 18 months. That's been working very successfully, and obviously, reach out to Russell if you want to expand on that. We partner with tech firms. We also make recommendations depending on what the circumstances are for the client. So we're very, very flexible in that arena to be able to adapt again to depending on what the client requires in that particular situation.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think we adapt as well really well when we're working with new organizations. They obviously have their own internal technology in-house, and that's where we spend a lot of time with working, understanding that technology, understanding those processes. So the teams are really flexible and adaptable to learning about, technologies at particular institutions we're working with. But we're very happy to have further discussions with, external sort of tech partners out there. So definitely open to any conversations there.
Fantastic. That is it from the audience. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences and what you do. Very much appreciated. Right, over to the graveyard shift. It is my pleasure to, there's Russell's and Jeff's details if you want to get in touch. I've also put in the chat, I should say, any of the useful links from the session, including the FinTrail and EFI session next week on the 17th, which is also Paddy's Day. So the session is sponsored by Guinness if you would like to join us. Cool. So last but not by no means least, let me introduce you to Alexandra from Tail. And I think this is also going, looking at also the other end of the financial crime spectrum when you're looking to also scale and build out your FinCrime team. So Alex has got lots of value and lots of experiences to add from her perspective as a specialist recruiter. Over to you, Alex.
Thanks, JP. Just remember you're in charge of my slideshow because I'm terrible with tech. But just like everyone who's been showcasing today, I just want to say it's an immense pleasure to be on here. So thanks again for the invite, JP. I was trying to think how I can make recruitment something interesting to showcase, but Tail is pretty self-explanatory in comparison to the great tech talk that we've heard today. But I work in recruitment, and what I do specifically is help fintechs build out their compliance and financial crime functions with a far more transparent angle. And what I wanted to speak about is actually some of the pain points for both candidates and hiring managers when it comes to fintech recruitment. And I'm going to start with the basics of recruitment. At its absolute core, recruiters find the right person for the role, right? Simple. And let's not shy away from the recruitment stereotype, because I know them all. We are very salesy. We just fling CVs over. We'll do anything to win business. And we don't reply back to candidates, and just so much more. And if you think that, you would be right. But this type of recruitment, whilst massively successful for big corporate institutions that have HR processes in place and red tape, it simply won't cut it for fintechs. Why? And I mean this with no disrespect intended whatsoever, but fintechs are chaotic. They want to do 1,000,001 things in one go. And I've been told that people age 4 years in the space of 1 year in a fintech. But what has this done for the recruitment space? In short, it's made recruiters level up. It's turned us into consultants. So when I work with my fintech clients, they don't tell me what to go and look for and that's it. I advise, educate, I change the job descriptions, I provide feedback, I talk about the branding, their image, their reputation, and their compliance culture. JP, I think you can move on to the next slide. There we go. Because C-suite doesn't have this information when they go and they make these initial financial crime hires. So the recruitment role is very quickly changing to what it should be, which is the role of a consultant, where you're advising on salaries, career progression, skills required for the size of the fintech, and all sorts of other stuff. And I am really happy to say that very slowly, this is what recruitment is changing to, which I hope with time, it's going to dismantle some of the terrible stereotypes that I mentioned at the beginning. I know we already have a Q&A section, but some of you did get back to me yesterday with some questions after the video I did. And I've asked JP to pick out some of the common ones, which are...
Cool. Thank you, Alex. This will be fun. So we have time to ad lib, so why not? Cool. So one of the questions that was asked by the FFE was, how do you go about finding the right recruiter?
Yeah, well, annoyingly, there is no quick formula for this. You already know, JP, I am working on a product right now to be the solution for this. But since we don't have it, I would say referrals first and foremost, referrals to recruiters that are specific to your industry. And the second one would be, if a recruiter approaches you, give them the time of day, even if you're not looking. Because whether you're a candidate or a hiring manager, you never actually know when you might need us. It may not be now, it may not be in 6 months' time, but having a relationship with someone can go a really, really long way. And the key word there is relationship. And I'll give you an example. I met with a senior person in 2019 for a fintech, and I spoke to them only once last year. They messaged me this week, and within the hour, I already had the interest from a client on their profile. But the only reason I did that is because of the relationship I have with this candidate and the hour-long chat we had discussing their frustrations, what they want, their ambitions. And the relationship piece is a key element that's ironically missing in recruitment. So I know all of you FinCrime professionals, you guys are super busy all the time, so you can't create a relationship with everyone, and that makes sense. But if you can find someone through referrals and you can invest the time, then I would then also start by testing that recruiter that approaches you. So you test their knowledge on the industry. What do they really know? Do they know what AML is? Because if they can't answer basic questions, then the chances are that their network is not going to be useful for the kind of jobs that you're looking for in the future. So once you do find someone, give them the time of day. That's the main thing I would say. And I would also emphasize, I see candidates do this a lot where they say, oh, this is not the right role for me, or I'm waiting for the right role. You need to tell us what the right role is, because the right role for one person is going to be very different to someone else, completely different. And ultimately, in an industry where relationships are the currency, people have made it extremely transactional, but if you see a recruiter willing to put the time in to nurture that relationship, don't take it for granted. So yeah, that would be the main thing I would say for that.
Are we on to the next question?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So what are the top 3 tips for corporate candidates looking to transition to fintech?
Now, okay, the FFE hasn't told me to say this, but I would definitely suggest the FinTRAIL course by ACAMS that was released this January. That is definitely a good one, just to give you some context, first of all. And I'm probably repeating myself on this because I've mentioned it on LinkedIn so many times, but it boils down to the following. You categorically have to be commercially aware. And secondly, you need to not have an ego. If you're an MLRO going to a small startup of 20 people, there probably isn't a transaction monitoring system put in place. There probably isn't someone doing the screening. So you're going to have to roll your sleeves up and do it yourself. And some candidates find this really, really difficult, and they figure out this isn't the right change for them. But you need to sit down and self-reflect and think whether these qualities are in you, whether you have enough of an interest in FinCrime to do all of these things. And then I'd consider connecting with people in this industry. So FFE community is absolutely brilliant for this, because you can go to people in FinTech, ask for their advice, like what's it really, really like? And then obviously I had to be cheeky and say, talk to recruiters. And by that, yes, I mean me. But those are the main tips I would say for that.
Cool, awesome, thank you, Alex. So why are salaries in fintech lower than the standard banking world?
This is definitely a bit of a taboo subject, but I thought it would be good to bring this out in the open because it's important. Salaries differentiate depending on the complexity of technical knowledge required. So corporate product knowledge pays more than the average e-money, like retail payments, because that's more based on volume. So there are salary differences based on product as well, not just fintech. And of course, if you've worked in corporate banking and you get an offer from an e-money payments institution, then naturally the job is going to feel that much more. Salaries are also lower because, I'm not going to lie, I think C-suite perhaps haven't thought or haven't really been through the fear of having something like a Section 166 upon them, or they don't really know how hard the FCA can come crashing down on their beautiful fintech product. So they don't know how expensive that can really be. On the plus side, though, there are 2 main things that can instigate a change in salary. And I'm going to use the MLRO as the main example, because the usual narrative is an MLRO leaves for whatever reason, and this would leave the fintech vulnerable. The fintechs will then understand the fundamental loss of an MLRO, and they're going to make the role more attractive for future MLROs coming in, but not just salary. It's actually the compliance culture that's more important in this case. And especially if they want to scale and they will face more scrutiny from the FCA in the future, they need to make sure that they get the right person on board. So it's sad to say, but if you're an MLRO that has changed jobs, I can almost guarantee you that the moment you left, the compliance culture would have shifted already. And it is sad that that's what it takes, but it does happen. And like I mentioned, the other thing that instigates a motivation to increase salary is FCA trouble. All of a sudden, this money is being pumped into the compliance function and hiring because they need to sort out the issues. So that's the main reasons I would say the salaries are lower. But conscious of time, I don't want to talk too much. I want to throw out a question to the FFE community, and you can feel free to message me your thoughts or your answers. But based on what I just said, why is it that fintechs need things to go sour in order for compliance to be heard? And what can we do about it? I think the question's on the next slide, JP, if you want to move it forward.
Oh, cool.
There it is.
I was thinking it was another question for me to ask. But no, that's cool. The last one.
Yeah.
Definitely a very interesting question to ask. And if there are any kind of early stage fintechs or any founders that have joined the session today, definitely something to consider. And if you feel customer acquisition, which is obviously a priority, is something that supersedes kind of the need for compliance, then definitely ask yourself that question. We at FinTrail are always banging the drum that you need to bake compliance in from the very beginning and as early as possible. Cool. That's enough from me. We do actually have a question from the audience. Sam asks, hi Sam, how about resumes? I cannot tell you the number of times people have sent me their resume and expect me to figure out how to transfer their skills into a fintech stroke different type of AML business. Do you coach candidates on this, Alex?
I do speak to candidates about this because it's difficult. I don't think with specific technical knowledge, if you work in a corporate bank, you tend to be a lot more siloed off, right? You've got assurance functions or you've got specific transaction monitoring functions. And in fintech, they tend to be a hell of a lot more broad. And the skills they really need to advertise on their CV is actually projects where they've been fully hands-on. Like, where have you fundamentally implemented change? Where have you, where have you shown that you're hands-on? And where have you potentially show an example where you've been really commercially aware, where you've seen something, but then you've made a success by talking to the business before escalating things on a higher level. So those are the kind of examples I would tell candidates to include on their CVs, just to really make it more attractive to fintechs.
Cool. We have another question from Gustavo. Leaving the banking world towards fintech ecosystem will impede your comeback to corporate. I'm guessing that's just asking for your opinion on that. What do you think?
I don't think I really get the question, unless I'm being really stupid here.
So if someone has left the corporate world to go to a fintech, has spent time at a fintech, then decides to go back into the corporate world, do you think being part of the fintech ecosystem will impede their chances of securing another job in a more traditional financial institution?
No, not at all. It really just depends on your motivations on this one. Like, if you did work in a fintech, really try to understand why you've left in the first place. Did you leave because of a higher salary? Or did you leave because it just wasn't structured in a fintech? And then just bear in mind that there are fintechs out there that are actually massive. If you just take a look at Stripe, SumUp, like all of the US fintechs are massive, and they have more of a structure than some of the smaller ones that have only 20 people. So there, I think in fintech, there is a space for everyone, but if you don't have the knowledge or you haven't done your research to see how big these institutions are, then it does feel like a whole new world, really.
Cool. Yeah, and just to add to that, we've certainly seen members of the FFE join fintechs from more traditional financial institutions, stay with a fintech for, let's say, 18 months to 2 years, and then go straight back. So it's not an uncommon transition. Cool. Hey, Jamie. Jamie asks, AML, what is this, a question or a statement, Jamie? I'm going to read it out and find out rather than pre AML roles typically get hundreds of applications in a matter of days. How can there's the question. How can hiring managers be better at responding to all candidates with regards to feedback? Because a lot of candidates have zero experience for a senior analyst role. We want to respond, but literally hundreds of applications.
Yeah, I know exactly what Jamie's referring to in that one, and it's predominantly to do with KYC analysts here. KYC analysts, there are so many people who do this, and they apply for every single role, and you can get like 400 to 500 applications per position. My first answer would be is use a recruiter, standard. But the other thing would be, it's really difficult to filter those out, actually, unless you have like an automated system. I know there's a couple of them. I think there's like Bamboo or Lever that you can use, where if you do reject a candidate, there's an automated message that goes to those candidates. But when you're dealing with such high volumes, of course, it's difficult to get individual feedback if you're doing the hiring internally. So I think that's the only real solution when it comes to high volume applications.
Just from a personal experience, Jamie, when we were recruiting for a community manager, because we are not community managers within FinTRAIL, and our network is not community managers, our network are anti-financial crime professionals, we use the LinkedIn platform to advertise and manage the application process, which worked really well. And as Alex kind of was alluding to other platforms, it gave you the option to send a kind of automatically generated message to people once you were able to screen them really quickly to then narrow down and shortlist. So I personally would recommend using the LinkedIn platform because it worked out really well.
Oh.
Cool. And then we just have a few nice positive messages coming into the chat, which is good. Cool.
Hey.
So, well, one more. Currently an AML specialist, what would be a natural career progression to a senior role, and what professional courses would complement that? You're teeing us up for Kafka. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, the professional courses I would recommend is Kafka. That would be a good one. If you're an AML specialist, though, okay, an AML specialist can mean someone who's been a specialist for like 10 years and you've siloed yourself off into being an SME. Or if you can be an AML specialist with 3 years experience, and then the next role would be a senior AML analyst. Then you can go into management. Then you can start going into second line experience, and you just work your way up in that way. Depending on your motivations and what interests you, the interest bit is massive, because if you have a real affinity for sanctions, then you can take the sanctions route. If that's what you really like, you can go into sanctions advisory or anything like that. So at your level, if you're an AML specialist, you've actually got a lot to think about and which avenue you want to go down on. So really self-reflect. Again, I know I use this a lot, but just self-reflect and figure out, what do you really like and what do you want to go into?
Cool. Thank you, Alex. And Jamie just adds another comment that crypto courses are your friend.
Yes.
And there's lots of kind of courses available out there, and training as well. So there are plenty of opportunities to upskill yourself. Brilliant. Cool. Right. We have probably a minute and a half, so let me wrap up. Thank you very much, Alex, for all your insights. James teed me up earlier and had a plot that I didn't mention the FFE Expert Working Group, but I had it in hand all along. So just to let everyone know, the Expert Working Group now has a dedicated page on the FinTRAIL website. So I've sent the links in the chat, so please find it. It's under FFE, and then you'll see the Expert Working Group button there. Just for people's awareness, we are running a series of topical roundtable discussions among industry leaders with the aim of connecting senior decision makers to discuss their own internal approaches to common challenges. We have so far hosted 2. We recently released our second report, which was partnerships between fintechs and law enforcement. And we also released our first one back in September, which was FinTech Approaches to Sanctions Regimes. Both times we brought together over 15 experts, particularly within those two specific topics, to have a discussion over two meetups to essentially produce two reports stroke best practice guidance on each topic. If you do have any thought on what we could approach or what we could discuss as future topics for the FFE expert working group, please email me, or if you remember, DM me on Slack. My email is in the chat. We also have coming up, following the success of last year's FinTech awareness training for law enforcement, delivered to over 150 agents. We're delighted to share that we were hosting the training again for our colleagues in law enforcement that may have missed out. The course is for international, national and regional law enforcement agents and provides agents with a deep dive into the unique financial crime risks of the FinTech sector. So if you do have any law enforcement contacts that you feel would benefit from joining this training, again, please email me or DM me on Slack. And that's it. Thank you so much for all our speakers. Huge thank you to the FinTrail team also, who helped curate these sessions, in addition to all the fabulous work that they do. And we are now bang on 5:30, so we've made great time. And I wish everyone a very pleasant evening, and it's goodbye from me. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, JP.
Ta-da.
Bye.